Homily 23, Part 2, St. John Chrysostom. Homilies on the Gospel of St. Matthew. Translated by the Reverend Sir George Prevost, M.A. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Homily 23, Part 2, Matthew 7, 13 through 20. Enter ye in at the strait gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. And strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. And yet after this he said, My yoke is easy, and my burden is light. And in what he hath lately said also, he intimated the same. How then doth he here say, It is strait and confined? In the first place, if thou attend, even here he points to it as very light, and easy, and accessible. And how, it may be said, is the narrow and confined way easy? Because it is a way and a gate, even as also the other, though it be wide, though spacious, is also a way and a gate. And of these there is nothing permanent, but all things are passing away, both the pains and the good things of life. And not only herein is the part of virtue easy, but also by the end again it becomes yet easier. For not the passing away of our labours and toils, but also their issuing in a good end, for they end in life, is enough to console those in conflict. So that both the temporary nature of our labours, and the perpetuity of our crowns, and the fact that the labours come first, and the crowns after, must prove a very great relief in our toils. Wherefore Paul also called their affliction light, not from the nature of the events, but because of the mind of the combatants, and the hope of the future. For our light affliction, saith he, worketh an eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For if to sailors the waves and the seas, to soldiers their slaughters and wounds, to husbandmen the winters and the frost, to boxers the sharp blows, be light and tolerable things, all of them, for the hope of those rewards which are temporary and perishing, much more when heaven is set forth, and the unspeakable blessings, and the eternal rewards, will no one feel any of the present hardships, or if any account it even thus to be toilsome, the suspicion comes of nothing but their own remissness. See, at any rate, how he on another side also makes it easy, commanding not to hold intercourse with the dogs, nor to give oneself over to the swine, and to beware of the false prophets, thus on all accounts causing men to feel as if in real conflict. And the very fact too of calling it narrow contributed very greatly towards making it easy, for it wrought on them to be vigilant. As Paul then, when he saith, We wrestle not against flesh and blood, doth so not to cast down, but to rouse up the spirits of the soldiers. Even so he also, to shake the travellers out of their sleep, called the way rough. And not in this way only did he work upon them to be vigilant, but also by adding, that it contains likewise many to supplant them, and what is yet more grievous, they do not even attack openly, but hiding themselves, for such is the race of the false prophets. But look not to this, saith he, that it is rough and narrow, but where it ends, nor that the opposite is wide and spacious, but where it issues. And all these things he saith, thoroughly to awaken our alacrity, even as elsewhere also he said, Violent men take it by force. For whoever is in conflict, when he actually sees the judge of the list marveling at the painfulness of his efforts, is the more inspirited. Let it not then bewilder us when many things spring up hence, to turn to our vexation. For the way is straight, and the gate narrow, but not the city. Therefore must one neither look for rest here, nor there expect any more aught that is painful. Now in saying, few there be that find it, here again he both declares the carelessness of the generality, and instructed his hearers not to regard the felicities of the many, but the labours of the few. For the more part, saith he, so far from walking this way, do not so much as make it their choice, a thing of most extreme criminality. But we should not regard the many, nor be troubled thereat, but emulate the few, and by all means equipping ourselves, should so walk therein. For besides that it is straight, there are also many to overthrow us in the way that leads thither. Wherefore he also added, beware of false prophets, for they will come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Behold together with the dogs and swine another kind of ambush and conspiracy, far more grievous than that. For those are acknowledged and open, but these shaded over. For which cause also, while from those he commanded to hold off, these he charged men to watch with exact care, as though it were not possible to see them at the first approach. Wherefore he also said, beware, making us more exact to discern them. Then, lest when they had heard that it was narrow and strait, that they must walk on a way opposite to the many, and must keep themselves from swine and dogs, and together with these from another more wicked kind, even this of wolves. Lest, I say, they should sink down at this multitude of vexations, having both to go away contrary to most men, and therewith again to have such anxiety about these things. He reminded them of what took place in the days of their fathers, by using the term false prophets. For then also no less did such things happen. Be not now, I pray you, troubled, so he speaks, for nothing new nor strange is to befall you, since for all truth the devil is always secretly substituting its appropriate deceit. And by the figure of false prophets, here I think he shadows out not the heretics, but them that are of a corrupt life, yet wear a mask of virtue, whom the generality are wont to call by the name of impostors. Wherefore he also said further, by their fruits ye shall know them. For amongst heretics one may often find actual goodness, but among those whom I was mentioning, by no means. What then, it may be said, if in these things too they counterfeit? Nay, they will be easily detected, for such is the nature of this way, in which I commanded men to walk, painful and irksome. But the hypocrite would not choose to take pains, but to make a show only. Wherefore also he is easily convicted. Thus, inasmuch as he had said, there be few that find it, he clears them out again from among those who find it not, yet feign so to do, by commanding us not to look to them that wear the masks only, but to them who in reality pursue it. But wherefore, one may say, did he not make them manifest, but set us on the search for them, that we might watch and be ever prepared for conflict, guarding against our disguised as well as against our open enemies, which kind indeed Paul also was intimating when he said that by their good words they deceive the hearts of the simple. Let us not be troubled therefore when we see many such even now. Nay, for this too Christ foretold from the beginning. And see his gentleness, how he said not, punish them, but be not hurt by them. Do not fall amongst them unguarded, then that thou mightest not say, it is impossible to distinguish that sort of men. Again he states an argument from a human example, thus saying, do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but the corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Now what he saith is like this, they have nothing gentle nor sweet. It is the sheep only so far as the skin, wherefore also it is easy to discern them. Unless thou shouldest have any the least doubt, he compares it to certain natural necessities, in matters which admit of no result but one, in which sense Paul also said, the carnal mind is death, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. And if he states the same thing twice, it is not tautology. But lest any one should say, though the evil tree bear evil fruit, it bears also good, and makes the distinction difficult, the crop being twofold. This is not so, saith he, for it bears evil fruit only, and never can bear good, as indeed in the contrary case also. What then? Is there no such thing as a good man becoming wicked? And the contrary again takes place, and life abounds with many such examples. But Christ saith not this, that for the wicked there is no way to change, or that the good cannot fall away, but that so long as he is living in wickedness, he will not be able to bear good fruit, for he may indeed change to virtue, being evil, but while continuing in wickedness he will not bear good fruit. What then? Did not David, being good, bear evil fruit? Not continuing good, but being changed, since undoubtedly, had he remained always what he was, he would not have brought forth such fruit. For not surely while abiding in the habit of virtue did he commit what he committed. Now by these words he was also stopping the mouths of those who speak evil at random, and putting a bridle on the lips of all calumniators. I mean, whereas many suspect the good by reason of the bad, he by this saying hath deprived them of all excuse. For thou canst not say, I am deceived and beguiled, since I have given thee exactly this way of distinguishing them by their works, having added the injunction to go to their actions, and not to confound all at random. Then, forasmuch as he had not commanded to punish, but only to beware of them, he at once both to comfort those whom they vex, and to alarm and change them, set up as a bulwark against them the punishment they should receive at his hands, saying, every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down, and cast into the fire. Then, to make the saying less grievous, he added, wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. That he might not seem to introduce the threatening as his leading topic, but to be stirring up their mind in the way of admonition and counsel. Here he seems to me to be hinting at the Jews also, who were exhibiting such fruits. Wherefore also he reminded them of the sayings of John, in the very same terms delineating their punishment. For he too said the very same, making mention to them of an axe, and of a tree cut down, and of unquenchable fire. And though it appear indeed to be some single punishment, the being burnt up, yet if one examine carefully, these are two punishments. For he that is burned is also cast, of course, out of God's kingdom. And this latter punishment is more grievous than the other. Now I know indeed that many tremble only at hell, but I affirm the loss of that glory to be a far greater punishment than hell. And if it be not possible to exhibit it such in words, this is nothing marvellous. For neither do we know the blessedness of those good things that we should on the other hand clearly perceive the wretchedness ensuing on being deprived of them. Since Paul, as knowing these things clearly, is aware that to fall from Christ's glory is more grievous than all. And this we shall know at that time, when we shall fall into the actual trial of it. But may this never be our case, O thou only begotten Son of God. Neither may we ever have any experience of this irremediable punishment. For how great an evil it is to fall from those good things cannot indeed be accurately told. Nevertheless, as I may be able, I will labor and strive by an example to make it clear to you, though it be but in some small degree. Let us then imagine a wondrous child, having besides his virtue the dominion of the whole world, and in all respects so virtuous as to be capable of bringing all men to the yearning of a father's affection. What theft do you think the father of this child would not gladly suffer, not to be cast out of his society? And what evil, small or great, would he not welcome, on condition of seeing and enjoying him? Now let us reason just so with respect to that glory also. For no child, be he never so virtuous, is so desirable and lovely to a father, as the having our portion in those good things, and to depart and be with Christ. No doubt hell, and that punishment, is a thing not to be borne. Yet though one suppose 10,000 hells, he will utter nothing like what it will be to fail of that blessed glory, to be hated of Christ, to hear I know you not, to be accused for not feeding him when he saw him and hungered. Yea, better surely to endure 1,000 thunderbolts than to see that face of mildness turning away from us, and that eye of peace not enduring to look upon us. For if he, while I was an enemy, and hating him, and turning from him, did in such wise follow after me, as not to spare even himself, but to give himself up unto death, when after all this I do not vouchsafe to him so much as a loaf in his hunger, with what kind of eyes shall I ever again behold him? But mark even here his gentleness, in that he doth not at all speak of his benefits, nor say, Thou hast despised him that hath done thee so much good. Neither doth he say, Me, who brought thee from that which is not into being, who breathed into thee a soul, and set thee over all things on earth, who for thy sake made earth, and heaven, and sea, and air, and all things that are, who had been dishonoured by thee, he accounted of less honour than the devil, and did not even so withdraw himself, but had innumerable thoughts for thee after it all, who chose to become a slave, who was beaten with rods and spit upon, who was slain, who died the most shameful death, who also on high makes intercession for thee, who freely gives thee his Spirit, who vouchsafes to thee a kingdom, who makes thee such promises, whose will it is to be unto thee head, and bridegroom, and garment, and house, and root, and meat, and drink, and shepherd, and king, and who had taken thee to be brother, and heir, and joint heir with himself, who hath brought thee out of darkness into the dominion of light. These things I say, and more than these he might speak of, but he mentions none of these. But what? Only the sin itself. Even here he shows his love, and indicates the yearning which he hath toward thee, not saying, Depart into the fire prepared for you, but prepared for the devil. And before he tells them what wrongs they had done, and neither so doth he endure to mention all, but a few. And before these he calls the other sort, those who have done well, to signify from this too that he is blaming them justly. What amount of punishment then is so grievous as these words? For if any one seeing but a man who was his benefactor and hungered, would not neglect him, or if he should neglect him, being upbraided with it, would choose rather to sink into the earth than to hear of it in the presence of 2 or 3 friends, what will be our feelings on hearing these words in the presence of the whole world, such as he would not say even then, were he not earnestly accounting for his own doings? For that not to upbraid did he bring these things forward, but in self-defense, and for the sake of showing that not without ground nor at random was he saying, Depart from me. This is evident from his unspeakable benefits. For if he had been minded to upbraid, he would have brought forward all these. But now he mentions only what treatment he had received. Let us therefore, beloved, fear the hearing these words. Life is not a plaything, or rather, our present life is a plaything, but the things to come are not such. Or perchance our life is not a plaything only, but even worse than this. For it ends not in laughter, but rather brings exceeding damage on them who are not minded to order their own ways strictly. For what, I pray thee, is the difference between children who are playing at building houses, and us when we are building our fine houses? What again between them making out their dinners, and us in our delicate fare? None, but just that we do it at the risk of being punished. And if we do not yet quite perceive the poverty of what is going on, no wonder, for we are not yet become men. But when we are become so, we shall know that all these things are childish. For so those other things too, as we grow to manhood, we laugh to scorn. But when we are children, we account them to be worth anxiety. And while we are gathering together potsherds and mire, we think no less of ourselves than they who are erecting their great circuits of walls. Nevertheless, they straightway perish and fall down, and not even when standing can they be of any use to us, as indeed neither can those fine houses. For the citizen of heaven they cannot receive, neither can he bear to abide in them, who hath his country above. But as we throw down these with our feet, so he too those by his high Spirit. And as we laugh at the children, weeping at that overthrow, even so these also, when we are bewailing it all, do not laugh only, but weep also. Because both their bowels are compassionate, and great is the mischief thence arising. Let us therefore become men. How long are we to crawl on the earth, priding ourselves on stones and stocks? How long are we to play? And would we played only. But now we even betray our own salvation. And as children, when they neglect their learning, and practice themselves in these things at their leisure, suffer very severe blows, even so we too, spending all our diligence herein, and having then our spiritual lessons required of us in our works, and not being able to produce them, shall have to pay the utmost penalty. For there is none to deliver us, though he be father, brother, what you will. But while these things shall all pass away, the torment ensuing upon them remains immortal and unceasing, which sort of thing indeed takes place with respect to the children as well, their father destroying their childish toys altogether for their idleness, and causing them to weep incessantly. And to convince thee that these things are such, let us bring before us wealth, that which more than anything seems to be worthy of our pains, and let us set against it a virtue of the soul, which soever thou wilt, and then shalt thou see most clearly the vileness thereof. Let us, I say, Suppose there are two men, and I do not now speak of injuriousness, but as yet of honest wealth. And of these two, let the one get together money, and sail on the sea, and till the land, and find many other ways of merchandise, although I know not quite whether, so doing, he can make honest gains. Nevertheless, let it be so, and let it be granted that his gains are gotten with honesty, that he buys fields, and slaves, and all such things, and suppose no injustice connected therewith. But let the other one, possessing as much, sell fields, sell houses, and vessels of gold and silver, and give to the poor. Let him supply the necessitous, heal the sick, free such as are in straits. Some let him deliver from bonds. Others let him release that are in mines. These let him bring back from the noose. Those who are captives let him rescue from their punishment. Of whose side then would you be? And we have not as yet spoken of the future, but as yet of what is here. Of whose part then would ye be? His that is gathering gold, or his that is doing away with calamities? With him that is purchasing fields, or him who is making himself a harbour of refuge for the human race? Him that is clothed with much gold, or him that is crowned with innumerable blessings? Is not the one like some angel come down from heaven for the amendment of the rest of mankind, but the other not so much as like a man, but like some little child that is gathering all together vainly and at random? But if to get money honestly be thus absurd and of extreme madness, when not even the honesty is there, how can such a man choose but be more wretched than any? I say, if the absurdity be so great, when hell is added thereto, and the loss of the kingdom, how great wailings are due to him, both living and dead. Or wilt thou that we take in hand some other part also of virtue? Let us then introduce again another man, who is in power, commanding all, invested with great dignity, having a gorgeous herald, and girdle, and lictors, and a large company of attendants. Doth not this seem great, and meet to be called happy? Well then, against this man again let us set another, him that is patient of injuries, and meek, and lowly, and long-suffering. And let this last be despitefully used, be beaten, and let him bear it quietly, and bless them that are doing such things. Now which is the one to be admired, I pray thee? He that is puffed up and inflamed, or he that is self-subdued? Is not the one again like the powers above, that are so free from passion, but the other like a blown bladder, or a man who hath the dropsy, and great inflammation? The one like a spiritual physician, the other a ridiculous child that is puffing out his cheeks. For why dost thou pride thyself, O man? Because thou art borne on high in a chariot? Because a yoke of mules is drawing thee? But what is this? Why, this one may see befalling mere logs of wood and stones. Is it that thou art clothed with beautiful garments? But look at him that is clad with virtue for garments, and thou wilt see thyself to be like withering hay, but him like a tree that bears marvellous fruit, and affords much delight to the beholders. For thou art bearing about food for worms and moths, who, if they should set upon thee, wilt quickly strip thee bare of this adorning. For truly garments and gold and silver are the one, the spinning of worms, the other earth and dust, and again become earth and nothing more. But he that is clothed with virtue hath such raiment, as not only worms cannot hurt, but not even death itself. And very naturally, For these virtues of the soul have not their origin from the earth, but are the fruit of the Spirit. Wherefore neither are they subject to the mouths of worms. Nay, for these garments are woven in heaven, where is neither moth, nor worm, nor any other such thing. Which then is better, tell me, to be rich or to be poor, to be in power or in dishonour, in luxury or in hunger? It is quite clear. To be in honour and enjoyment and wealth. Therefore, if thou wouldest have the things and not the names, leave the earth and what is here, and find thee a place to anchor in heaven. For what is here is a shadow, but all things there are immovable, steadfast, and beyond any assault. Let us therefore choose them with all diligent care, that we may be delivered from the turmoil of the things here, and having sailed into that calm harbour, may be found with our lading abundant, and with that unspeakable wealth of almsgiving, unto which God grant we may all attain, by the grace and love towards man of our Lord Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory and the might, world without end. Amen. End of Homily 23. Homily 24, St. John Chrysostom. Homilies on the Gospel of St. Matthew. Translated by the Reverend Sir George Prevost, M.A. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Homily 24, Matthew 7, 21 through 27. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Wherefore said he not, but he that doeth my will? Because for the time it was a great gain for them to receive even this first. Yea, it was very great, considering their weakness. And moreover, he intimated the one also by the other. And withal this may be mentioned, that in fact there is no other will of the Son besides that of the Father. And here he seems to me to be censuring the Jews chiefly, laying as they did the whole stress upon the doctrines, and taking no care of practice. For which Paul also blames them, saying, Behold, thou art called a Jew, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of God, and knowest his will. Who then are these men, you ask? Many of them that believed received gifts, such as he that was casting out devils, and was not with him, such as Judas, for even he too, wicked as he was, had a gift. And in the Old Testament also this may be found, in that grace hath oftentimes wrought upon unworthy persons, that it might do good to others. That is, since all men were not meet for all things, but some were of a pure life, not having so great faith, and others just the contrary. By these sayings, while he urges the one to show forth much faith, the others too he was summoning by this his unspeakable gift to become better men. Wherefore also with great abundance did he bestow that grace. For we wrought, it is said, many mighty works. But then will I profess unto them, I knew you not. For now indeed they suppose they are my friends, but then shall they know that not as to friends did I give to them. And why marvel, if he hath bestowed gifts on men that have believed on him, though without life suitable to their faith, when even on those who have fallen from both these he is unquestionably found working? For so Balaam was an alien both from faith and from a truly good life, nevertheless grace wrought on him for the service of other men. And Pharaoh too was of the same sort, Yet for all that, even to him he signified the things to come. And Nebuchadnezzar was very full of iniquity. Yet to him again he revealed what was to follow after many generations. And again to the son of this last, though surpassing his father in iniquity, he signified the things to come, ordering a marvellous and great dispensation. Accordingly, because then also the beginnings of the gospel were taking place, and it was requisite that the manifestation of its power should be abundant, many even of the unworthy used to receive gifts. Howbeit, from those miracles no gain accrued to them, rather they are the more punished. Wherefore unto them did he utter even that fearful saying, I never knew you. There being many for whom his hatred begins already even here, whom he turns away from, even before the judgment. Let us fear therefore, beloved, and let us take great heed to our life. Neither let us account ourselves worse off, in that we do not work miracles now. For that will never be any advantage to us, as neither any disadvantage in our not working them, if we take heed to all virtue. Because for the miracles we ourselves are debtors, but for our life and our doings we have God our debtor. Having now, you see, finished all, having discoursed accurately of all virtue, and pointed out the pretenders to it, of divers kinds, both such as for display fast, and make prayers, and such as come in the sheep's hide, and them too that spoil it, whom he also called swine and dogs. He proceeds to signify how great is the profit of virtue even here, and how great the mischief of wickedness, by saying, Whosoever therefore heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, shall be likened unto a wise man. And thus, what they shall suffer who do not, although they work miracles, ye have heard. But ye should know also what such as obey all these sayings shall enjoy, not in the world to come only, but even here. For whosoever, saith he, heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, shall be likened to a wise man. Seest thou how he varies his discourse, at one time saying, Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, and revealing himself. At another time, he that doeth the will of my Father, and again, bringing in himself as judge. For many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And I will say, I know you not. And here again he indicates himself to have the power over all, this being why he said, Whosoever heareth these sayings of mine. Thus, whereas all his discourse had been touching the future, of a kingdom, and an unspeakable reward and consolation, and the like, his will is, out of the things here also, to give them their fruits, and to signify how great is the strength of virtue even in the present life. What then is this her strength? To live in safety, to be easily subdued by no terror, to stand superior to all that despitefully use us. To this what can be equal? For this, not even he that wears the diadem can provide for himself, but that man who follows after virtue. For he alone is possessed of it in full abundance. In the ebb and flow of the things present, he enjoys a great calm. The truly marvellous thing being this, that not in fair weather, but when the storm is vehement, and the turmoil great, and the temptations continual, he cannot be shaken ever so little. For the rain descendeth, saith he, the floods came, the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon the rock. By rain here, and floods and winds, he is expressing metaphorically the calamities and afflictions that befall men, such as false accusations, plots, bereavements, deaths, loss of friends, vexations from strangers, all the ills in our life that any one could mention. But to none of these, saith he, doth such a soul give way. And the cause is, it is founded on the rock. He calls the steadfastness of his doctrine a rock, because in truth his commands are stronger than any rock, setting one above all the waves of human affairs. For he who keeps these things strictly will not have the advantage of men only when they are vexing him, but even of the very devils plotting against him. And that it is not vain boasting, so to speak, Job is our witness, who received all the assaults of the devil, and stood unmovable. And the apostles too are our witnesses, for that when the waves of the whole world were beating against them, when both nations and princes, both their own people and strangers, both the evil spirits and the devil, and every engine was set in motion, they stood firmer than a rock, and dispersed it all. And now what can be happier than this kind of life? For this, not wealth, not strength of body, not glory, not power, nor aught else will be able to secure, but only the possession of virtue. For there is not, nay, there is not another life we may find free from all evils, but this alone. And ye are witnesses, who know the plots in kings' courts, the turmoils and the troubles in the houses of the rich. But there was not among the apostles any such thing. What then? Did no such thing befall them? Did they suffer no evil at any man's hand? Nay, the marvel is this above all things, that they were indeed the object of many plots, and many storms burst upon them, but their soul was not overset by them, nor thrown into despair, but with naked bodies they wrestled, prevailed, and triumphed. Thou then likewise, if thou be willing to perform these things exactly, shall laugh all ills to scorn. Yea, for if thou be but strengthened with such philosophy as is in these admonitions, nothing shall be able to hurt thee. Since in what is he to harm thee, who is minded to lay plots? Will he take away thy money? Well, but before their threatening thou wast commanded to despise it, and to abstain from it so exceedingly, is not so much as even to ask any such thing of thy Lord. But doth he cast thee into prison? Why, before thy prison, thou wast enjoined so to live, as to be crucified even to all the world. But doth he speak evil? Nay, from this pain also Christ hath delivered thee, by promising thee without toil a great reward for the endurance of evil, and making thee so clear from the anger and vexation hence arising, as even to command thee to pray for them. But doth he banish thee and involve thee in innumerable ills? Well, he is making the crown more glorious for thee. But doth he destroy and murder thee? Even hereby he profits thee very greatly, procuring for thee the rewards of the martyrs, and conducting thee more quickly into the untroubled haven, and affording thee matter for a more abundant recompense, and contriving for thee to make a gain of the universal penalty. Which thing indeed is most marvellous of all, that the plotters, so far from injuring at all, do rather make the objects of their despite more approved. To this what can be comparable? I mean, to the choice of such a mode of life as this, and no other, is. Thus whereas he had called the way straight and narrow, to soothe our labours on this side also, he signifies the security thereof to be great, and great the pleasure, even as of the opposite course great is the unsoundness and the detriment. For as virtue even from things here was signified by him to have her rewards, so vice also her penalties. For what I am ever saying, that I will say now also, that in both ways he is everywhere bringing about the salvation of his hearers on the one hand by zeal for virtue, on the other by hatred of vice. Thus, because there would be some to admire what he said, while they yield no proof of it by their works, he by anticipation awakens their fears, saying, though the things spoken be good, hearing is not sufficient for security, but there is need also of obedience in actions, and the whole lies chiefly in this. And here he ends his discourse, leaving the fear at its height in them. For as with regard to virtue, not only from the things to come did he urge them, speaking of a kingdom, and of heaven, and an unspeakable reward, and comfort, and the unnumbered good things, but also from the things present, indicating the firm and immovable quality of the rock, so also with respect to wickedness, not from the expected things only doth he excite their fears, as from the tree that is cut down, and the unquenchable fire, and the not entering into the kingdom, and from his saying, I know you not, but also from the things present, the downfall I mean, in what is said of the house. Wherefore also he made his argument more expressive, by trying its force in a parable. For it was not the same thing to say, the virtuous man shall be impregnable, but the wicked easily subdued, as to suppose a rock, and a house, and rivers, and rain, and wind, and the like. And every one, saith he, that heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them not, shall be like unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And well did he call this man foolish, for what can be more senseless than one building a house on the sand, and while he submits to the labor, depriving himself of the fruit and refreshment, and instead thereof undergoing punishment? For that they too, who follow after wickedness, do labor, is surely manifest to every one, since both the extortioner, and the adulterer, and the false accuser, toil and weary themselves much to bring their wickedness to effect. But so far from reaping any profit from these their labors, they rather undergo great loss. For Paul too intimated this when he said, He that soweth to his flesh shall of his flesh reap corruption. To this man are they like also, who build on the sand, as those that are given up to fornication, to wantonness, to drunkenness, to anger, to all the other things. Such an one was Ahab, but not Elijah, since when we have put virtue and vice alongside of one another, we shall know more accurately the difference. For the one had built upon the rock, the other on the sand. Wherefore, though he were a king, he feared and trembled at the prophet, at him that had only his sheepskin. Such were the Jews, but not the apostles. And so though they were few and in bonds, they exhibited the steadfastness of the rock. But those, many as they were, and in armor, the weakness of the sand. For so they said, What shall we do to these men? Seest thou those in perplexity, not who are in the hands of others and bound, but who are active in holding down and binding? And what can be more strange than this? Hast thou hold of the other, and art yet in utter perplexity? Yes, and very naturally. For inasmuch as they had built all on the sand, therefore also were they weaker than all. For this cause also they said again, What do ye, seeking to bring this man's blood upon us? What saith he? Dost thou scourge, and art thou in fear? Entreatest thou despitefully, and art in dismay? Dost thou judge, and yet tremble? So feeble is wickedness. But the apostles not so, but how? We cannot but speak the things which we have seen and heard. Seest thou a noble spirit? Seest thou a rock laughing waves to scorn? Seest thou a house unshaken? And what is yet more marvellous, so far from turning cowards themselves at the plots formed against them, they even took more courage, and cast the others into greater anxiety. For so he that smites adamant is himself the one smitten, and he that kicks against the pricks is himself the one pricked, the one on whom the severe wounds fall. and he who is forming plots against the virtuous is himself the one in jeopardy. For wickedness becomes so much the weaker the more it sets itself in array against virtue. And as he who wraps up fire in a garment extinguishes not the flame, but consumes the garment, so he that is doing despite to virtuous men, and oppressing them, and binding them, makes them more glorious, but destroys himself. For the more ills thou sufferest, living righteously, the stronger art thou become, since the more we honor self-restraint, the less we need anything, and the less we need anything, the stronger we grow, and the more above all. Such a one was John, wherefore him no man pained, but he caused pain to Herod. So he that had nothing prevailed against him that ruled, and he that wore a diadem and purple and endless pomp trembles in fear of him that is stripped of all, and not even when beheaded could he without fear see his head. For that even after his death he had the terror of him in full strength. Hear what he saith, This is John whom I slew. Now the expression, I slew, is that of one not exulting, but soothing his own terror, and persuading his troubled soul to call to mind that he himself slew him. So great is the force of virtue, that even after death it is more powerful than the living. For this same cause again, when he was living, they that possessed much wealth came unto him and said, What shall we do? Is so much yours, and are ye minded to learn the way of your prosperity from him that hath nothing? The rich from the poor? The soldiers from him that hath not even a house? Such an one was Elias too. Wherefore also with the same freedom did he discourse to the people. For as the former said, Ye generation of vipers, so this latter, How long wilt ye halt upon both your hips? And the one said, Hast thou killed and inherited? The other, It is not lawful for thee to have thy brother Philip's wife. Seest thou the rock? Seest thou the sand? How easily it sinks down, how it yields to calamities, how it is overthrown, though it have the support of royalty, of number, of nobility. For them that pursue it, it makes more senseless than all. And it doth not merely fall, but with great calamity. For great indeed, he saith, was the fall of it. The risk not being of trifles, but of the soul, of the loss of heaven, and those immortal blessings. Or rather even before that loss, no life so wretched as he must live that follows after this, dwelling with continual despondencies, alarms, cares, anxieties, which a certain wise man also was intimating when he said, The wicked fleeth when no man is pursuing. For such men tremble at their shadows, suspect their friends, their enemies, their servants, such as know them, such as know them not, and before their punishment suffer extreme punishment here. And to declare all this, Christ said, And great was the fall of it, shutting up these good commandments with that suitable ending, and persuading even by the things present the most unbelieving to flee from vice. For although the argument from what is to come be vaster, yet is this of more power to restrain the grosser sort, and to withdraw them from wickedness. Wherefore also he ended with it, that the profit thereof might make its abode in them. Conscious therefore of all these things, both the present and the future, let us flee from vice. Let us emulate virtue, that we may not labor fruitlessly and at random, but may both enjoy the security here and partake of the glory there, unto which God grant we may all attain, by the grace and love towards man of our Lord Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory and the might for ever and ever. Amen. End of Homily 24. End of St. John Chrysostom Homilies 15 through 24 on the Gospel of St. Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. Homilies translated by the Reverend Sir George Prevost, M.A.